He went to the market that morning thinking only of supper. The air was thick with the smell of blood, dust, and sun-baked hides. Thomas Carter, a quiet rancher with worn boots and a heavier soul, just wanted a slab of beef to take home. But fate had its own trade to make that day. Between the shouting vendors and braying mules, he saw her, standing barefoot on a crate, wrists tied, eyes dark as the storm. An Apache woman. A widow, someone whispered. The crowd circled like vultures as a trader barked her price in cruel jest. $1 silver, cheaper than beef and less spoiled. Laughter cracked through the heat, and Thomas felt his stomach twist. She didn't lower her gaze. Even in chains, she stood tall, her face calm, defiant, unbroken. He hadn't planned to stop, but his horse did, as if it too sensed something sacred and wrong. He tossed the butcher his coins before his reason could catch up. "Untie her," he said, voice steady but heart racing. The trader smirked, amused. "You buying a woman or trouble, cowboy?" Thomas didn't answer. He stepped closer, cut the ropes, and for a brief moment their fingers brushed. Her skin was warm, trembling, not with fear but fury. She didn't thank him. She didn't need to. When the market fell silent and the dust swallowed the laughter, Thomas knew he had crossed a line he could never return from. The woman looked at him once, eyes filled with a history he could never understand, and walked beside his horse as if deciding whether to trust or kill him later. The wind carried the scent of sage and fate. He had come for meat, but he was taking home a storm. The road home was long and cruel under the desert sun. Thomas rode ahead, but his thoughts stayed behind with her. She walked in silence, her bare feet raising tiny clouds of dust, her shadow gliding beside his horse. Once he offered her water. She took it without a word, her gaze fixed on the horizon, as if she were chasing ghosts only she could see. He wondered what they'd done to her, what she'd lost. By dusk, they reached the ranch, a lonely stretch of wood and silence framed by dying light. Thomas dismounted and turned to her, unsure what came next. "You can rest inside," he said. She didn't move. "You bought me," she replied quietly. "But I am not yours." The words struck him like a whip. He opened his mouth to protest, but found none that mattered. So he just nodded. "Then you're free to stay or to go." That night she stayed. Not because of kindness, because of hunger. Thomas gave her food, placed a blanket near the fire, and tried not to stare as she ate slowly, watching him with guarded eyes. The silence between them was a battlefield of its own. He lay awake long after she slept, wondering what kind of man he had become, one who freed a woman by buying her. In the days that followed, she worked without asking. She fetched water, mended fences, tended the fire. Thomas tried to speak, but her quiet strength silenced him. Once when a coyote wandered too close, she grabbed a rifle and scared it off before he even noticed. "You don't owe me this," he said. She looked at him then, her eyes soft yet fierce. "And you don't owe me pity." Each night they sat by the fire, the crackle of wood filling the space where words should have been. He began to learn her rhythms, the way she glanced at the moon before sleep, the quiet hum of her song when she missed home. Her name, he learned one evening, was Naya. When she spoke it, it sounded like wind through canyon stone, beautiful but carved by pain. Weeks passed and the desert began to change. Where silence once ruled, laughter now flickered like small flames. Naya taught Thomas to read the wind, to listen before he spoke, to thank the earth after rain. He watched her move through the ranch with purpose, as if she'd been born from the land itself. She was no longer a stranger. She was the pulse of the place, and of something waking in his heart he couldn't name. One evening, as the sun drowned in red light, Thomas found her by the corral, tracing the horizon with her eyes. "You still think of him?" he said softly. Naya nodded. "He died fighting to protect what was ours. I dream of him often, but I wake up here." She turned to him then, closer than she'd ever stood before. "You did not save me, Thomas. You just gave me time to remember who I was." He felt shame, respect, and something deeper than either. "And who are you now?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "A woman who chooses." That night, when he reached for her hand, she didn't pull away. The stars seemed to hold their breath as the desert wrapped around them, not in ownership but in quiet understanding. Months later, When travelers passed through and asked how he came by such a fierce woman, Thomas would only grin. "I went to buy meat," he'd say, but found a heartbeat instead. The story spread. Whispered from campfires to taverns, a rancher and an Apache widow who defied the rules of their broken world. And though the years would take their youth, the land never forgot them. Their names lingered in the dust, their laughter in the wind. The desert knew the truth of that strange day in Santa Fe, that sometimes a man goes looking for something to feed his hunger, but finds the one thing that can feed his soul instead. Years later, the ranch stood like a small oasis in the unforgiving land. Grass grew taller, the well never dried, and the nights hummed with the quiet peace they had built together. Thomas and Naya worked side by side, no longer as master and servant, but as equals bound by something stronger than words. He'd forgotten the man who once bought her, and she'd stopped seeing the man who once took part in her people's pain. Sometimes, when the wind carried the echoes of drums from distant hills, Naya would pause and close her eyes. Thomas would watch her, never asking what she heard. He knew some memories belonged only to her. In those moments, he understood that love wasn't possession, it was presence. The courage to stand beside someone without trying to own their past. One autumn evening, as the horizon burned gold, Naya handed him a small knife wrapped in cloth. "This was my husband's," she said quietly. "I buried it long ago, but today, I want you to have it." Thomas took it with both hands, reverent as if holding her soul. "Why me?" he asked. Naya smiled. "Because you never tried to change who I was. You just let me live." Years rolled into decades. When Thomas grew frail, Naya cared for him with the same silent devotion he once showed her. On his last day, he whispered, "I went to buy meat and found my life." She pressed her forehead to his and said, "And I found my freedom." When he was gone, she buried him beneath the lone mesquite tree, where the wind never stopped singing. Long after, travelers passing through would sometimes swear they saw a woman standing there at dusk, tall, proud, her hair braided with desert thorns, watching the horizon as if waiting for someone. And the legend endured of the rancher who bought an Apache widow and, in doing so, learned that no man can ever truly own another's spirit, only love it and be changed by it forever.